Hello and welcome to Cheshire Audio. Now, this is going to be a retro review. I've not done one of these for a while. And what's happened is I've had a few bits come in of interest. A customer very kindly gifted me a few bits and bobs of equipment when he sort of bought his new system. So first of these is going to be an Arcam amplifier. I want to talk about the history of Arcam, really. I mean, you've probably seen, or you may not have seen, I did a review of the A&R Cambridge A60 amplifier, and that was the very first Arcam amplifier, because A&R of Cambridge slowly became Arcam. And the amplifier I've got today is actually quite interesting because it was the first actual proper Arcam product, I suppose you would say. The A60 was from about 1973 through till probably about 1990. Quite a lot. Was it long? Certainly from early 70s through into certainly late 80s anyway. And around 84, 85, I'm stretching my memory a little bit now, trying to think. Arcam A&R at the time brought out an amplifier called the Alpha, which was intended to be a sort of a budget version of an A60. It was slightly controversial looking amplifier. It wasn't standard width, it was 400mm wide, as opposed to the usual 430-ish, or 430, 440 is standard. And it was sort of black and grey, and it had a very sort of soft plastic looking front panel. I'll put a picture up to show you, up there somewhere. I really liked it. I thought it was actually a really good looking amp, but it sort of divided opinion quite a bit, and it was a bit of a stumbling block as far as selling them went. It was very good. It was a little bit like the A60. It was possibly a little bit overly soft. It was a bit. If anybody ever owned, and most people probably did, ever owned a NAD 3020, it was very similar sounding to that. Not quite as sort of full at the bottom end, but it had that sort of softness that the NAD 3020 had, which worked well, to be fair. I mean, it was. I mean, the design of the amplifier was very good. It did drive very low impedances, which it shouldn't. The price it shouldn't have done. And apparently it was fairly stable down to 2 ohms, which is really unusual for a sort of kind of budget amplifier. That was replaced by the Alpha Plus, and the Alpha Plus was kind of the same amp, but in black, with a few mods, I think, and it sounded a little bit lighter and brighter than the original. I don't remember that lasting very long. But next along was the Alpha 2, so the third version of the Arcam Alpha was called the 2. And that's what we've got here today, so I'm going to just turn the camera around and we'll have a look. Yeah, so they are Arcam Alpha 2. You may notice we've got Arcam Alpha written on here. We haven't got A&R Cambridge, because the original had A&R Cambridge and then Arcam Alpha and the little logo on this side. So this is, I think, the first, might be wrong, but I think this is the very first purely Arcam product, or sort of designated as such, because I think the company's continued to be called A&R Cambridge, but its public face was Arcam. This is now full width, whereas like I said, this is a 430mm, I think, whereas the original was, about this sort of width here, which is 400. So you could now stack it with other equipment, whereas you couldn't before. After this, we went to the 3, which was a sort of restyle, I think, but very similar internally. This is testing my memory. Then the 5, which was probably a favourite in the range. I really liked the 5. And then they brought out, when the 5 was still going, I think they brought out a 6, which was a better version of. Can't remember if there was a 7. I should have looked this up. I can't remember if there was a 7, but there was certainly, after that we went to the 8 with the 9 as the next model up. And I think while those two were current, they also went to an Alpha 10, which was amazing. It was such a good amplifier, but horrendously unreliable. And I think around that time, Arcam was starting to have reliability issues anyway. They'd sort of got into AV and all this sort of thing. And they weren't a reliable product by that point, which was a shame, because I think they got too overcomplicated. Kind of sorted themselves out, but I think that around that time, they sort of things all went a little bit wrong, really. But probably of the range, probably the 5 was a peak, I think. And probably the 9. I think the 9 was a really good amp. And still reliable, so that was a good all rounder, and it was sort of up against bottom end name stuff and things like that. So it was a good all rounder, really. As far as features go, very similar to an A6 to the Alpha 2. It's got disc input, so I'll change hands. We've got record player input as disc, CD, tuner, video, interestingly, and then a little tape switch. Disc, obviously record player. It's got a moving magnet input. I think you could actually opt for a moving coil. Now, whether that was as well as or instead of, I can't remember. I suspect it might have been instead of, but it's just testing my memory on that a little bit, really. Alpha 2 is about 30 watts, I think, but drove really well. It's a bit like the original, where it would happily drive very low impedances, and I think the power into low impedances was sort of quite a bit more. I can't think figures-wise. I don't know. I think it's probably somewhat more into sort of 4 or 2 ohm. I've actually got bass and treble. Now that's a bit of an unusual thing to see on sort of a specialist amp, really, but they don't have an awful lot of effect. It's very subtle in their effect, and I think if you're going to have tone controls, you don't really want them dominating too much, because they do mess around with phasing, that sort of thing, make things sound a bit strange. And quite often with the tone, if an amp's got very sort of radical tone controls, it tends to be quite difficult to get it to sound any good at all, really, because they always sound a bit strange. So yeah, it's quite subtle, a bit like the A60, very, very sort of subtle effect, bass and treble. Balance control, not that common, but I still don't quite understand why you would want a balance control, but it was quite a popular thing, really. It isn't something you see, again, don't really see so much now. Headphone input and on off, so yeah, a good little amp, really. I mean, I think it probably moved Arcam forward quite a bit, because I think it was, from what I remember, the Alpha 2 was a really good seller. The one was sort of mixed, like I say, mixed reviews. People didn't necessarily, everybody liked the sound of it, but it didn't really sort of necessarily sell that well, because it looked a little bit Lego-ish, actually. So yeah, that's front panel. I'll turn it around and let's have a look at what's on the back. Yeah, so here we have back panel, and I forgot to mention, actually, it actually came in with its original owner's manual, which is nice. Actually shows a picture of the Alpha 2 with the Alpha 2 tuner, and we sort of forget how common it was for people to have an FM tuner in the system, and that almost died a death overnight when the BBC started talking about DAB and that they would actually be switching off FM. People just stopped buying specialist FM tuners. I mean, Arcam did some really good models. I mean, Alpha 2 was a good one. The original Alpha was a good tuner. The A&R Cambridge T21, which was the A60, that was a really good tuner. Name Audio made some amazing tuners. 101, the 01, the 02. Amazing FM tuners. Probably the best source you can get, actually. Even better than record. Good live broadcast on Radio 3 on an FM tuner was astonishing. All that's gone, and it sort of went, like I say, it went overnight. And it wasn't being replaced by anything, because people who may have sort of continued with radio listened to DAB through a decent system and decided it wasn't very good, which it wasn't. So it kind of killed it overnight. And the whole radio thing has gone into portables now. You don't really get a full hi-fi system with radio anymore. And I suppose to a degree, it's gone down the streaming side. If you've got a streamer, then you can access internet radio. So I suppose it is still there to a certain point, but it's just not talked about. It was really weird how that happened, and it's so irritating. A good 20 years on, which it must be by now, that they've never switched FM off anyway. So if people had known that it was never going to be switched off, perhaps it would have continued. I don't know. Annoys me a little bit, that, really. But anyway, I'm going off on a tangent here. I'm supposed to be talking about Arcam Alpha 2. Back panel. Just quickly, we've got your good old IEC 3-pin socket on the back. Interestingly, 6 sockets. I mean, this is, again, a bit like the A60, a bit like a few amps at this time, really, because it had a headphone socket on. We've got common and direct, or common and switched. The switched ones, if you plugged your positive negative into those two, when you plugged your headphones in, it switched off the speakers. If you did it this way around, so if you weren't going to use headphones, you just put it into the common direct side, and then it didn't switch out. If you'd plugged headphones in, it wouldn't switch out. But if you weren't going to use them, you're better using the cleaner part of the circuit, which isn't switched. So it gives you that option. Don't really seem to get that nowadays either, really. That's quite unusual. I think Creek did it as well. Creek 4040 had both options as well. So it was a sort of a thing around this sort of era. We've got a row of sockets. We've got record player input with a little ground there. CD, tuner, video. Obviously these three are all the same, but in these days we were still labelling things.
and then tape in and out. So it'll tape circuit as well. So yeah, I mean, it's specified well enough, really. I mean, what more would you need? So yeah, there you go. That's the Alpha 2. Really pleased with this one. It's got the usual thing with, if I can find it, usual thing with Alphas that one of the feet's missing. Typically, it's only the last one, isn't it? Yeah, we've got a foot missing. They had little stick-on feet underneath, and invariably one of them will go missing. Obviously can't get them now. I'll have to come up with some alternatives. But anyway, let's just turn the camera around. Yeah, so that's the Arcam Alpha 2. I hope you like that one. I must admit, I really enjoy doing retro reviews. I don't know, it's perhaps I should be reviewing more new equipment, but I think occasionally just to go back 35 years and just talk about things that I was selling years and years ago. I just enjoy it. So you're stuck with it. So anyway, don't forget to give a subscribe and a like. Thanks for all the lovely comments I get on the phone, emails. Like I said, I don't read comments anymore. There's way too many comments. I can't keep up with it. So I've sort of made a definite blanket decision not to sort of read those now. So if you want to get through to me, just by all means give me a call. No problem with that. Or send me an email, which is going to be at the end of the video. I will be doing a Dali review. I'll probably try and do that. I've probably not got time today. I've got time today. Possibly tomorrow, so it might be published by the weekend. And I will be doing at some point very soon a competition as well, which I'm working on. So yeah, that'll be fairly soon. So thanks for watching. I'll see you in a future video.